Hello and welcome to the Permaculture Fine podcast, where we talk about permaculture people and their projects. I'm your host Cormac Harkin, and today we have Ryan Steva. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on.
Do you want to just give us a quick introduction there as to who you are, what you do?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Ryan Steva. I run a small business helping people get homesteads set up here in Tennessee in the United States. And I've really enjoyed working with people. And basically, I have a bit of a backstory helping friends and family get systems set up, and just really kind of got into permaculture through several different circumstances. And so I found that I was actually really good at it while helping friends and family, and decided to start offering that as a service for people in my area, because I realized that I saw a lot of people starting homesteads and then basically burning out or spending all their money, or in one way or another failing in pretty major ways. And so I wanted to give back to my community, and really, to be able to do that well, I had to make a way to monetize it. So I put those things together and started helping people maybe almost 3 years ago now. I started doing it kind of officially. And so I've just continued to do that. And I've really, really enjoyed seeing the community in my area grow, people get more connected, and spend less time and money and less spinning of their wheels getting going. So that's I guess what I do in a nutshell is I help people both with design of their systems as well as potential implementation, and even just talking through different ideas on how they can put systems together. So one of my specialties really is, in permaculture, we call it function stacking. I believe it's the 8th principle in Holmgren's 12 principles of permaculture. He calls it integrate rather than segregate, but most of us in the permaculture world call that function stacking. And so that's one of the things that I really focus on, is helping people stack systems together in such a way that they become synergistic and much more functional as a grouping, as opposed to a single thing. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing with people.
Ryan, that's great. A lot to cover there. Do you want to take us back to the very start, just into what came first, the homestead or permaculture? Or
Yeah. Let's see. So, without trying to rehash the whole thing, basically I had a pretty significant sickness in my 20s. And I figured out how to correct that with just some dietary changes. But it really opened the door to me to see how broken our healthcare system is in general, like worldwide, all first world nations, third world nations, whatever. Like, healthcare is really broken because it's always pushing pills. It's always pushing a chemical to, correct an issue. And so there's this realization of how broken those systems are. And then that kind of started a cascade. And I think a lot of people start this way. It's either health, or it's, maybe they get into it through the financial systems, where they go, that's really broken. And once you realize how broken one system is that you trusted, you start to realize how broken all the other systems are. And so after my health issue, I started to want to grow food, because I was like, well, you know what? Our healthcare system is broken. Our food systems are broken. And when I did that, I failed really badly at starting a small garden, because my wife went on Pinterest, found a cute picture. I tried to emulate it, found out that somebody had not really been honest, and they had basically just taken full grown plants and put them in the system, and that there's no way to make the system that I was trying to build work. So I realized I needed to do more research. And by that time, with the health issue I had basically figured out how to read scientific literature, all the gobbledygook and garbage and all the, sort through all of it, and, find the truth behind the scientific studies and things. And so then I just took that ability to research and figure out the truth about what's behind it, and started putting that into how do I grow food? Because that was my next thing, was how do I make more healthy food for myself and my family? And so that kind of, I then stumbled upon things like lasagna gardening or back to Eden method for gardening. And so that was right around the time that we moved from Minnesota to Tennessee. That's about 9 years ago now. And so I started my own garden right away when we got here. Little while after, I got chickens. And then I started to learn more and more about permaculture. And so I realized I can integrate the things. So I started putting my chickens in my garden and wood chips all together, and figured out that you could really basically create a gardening chicken egg production compost system that takes almost no work once it's set up. And at the time, I was working probably 60 plus hours at a job that was an hour and a half away from where I live. So well more than full time. So I needed something that was simple, that also, when I got home, could be kind of a pressure relief for me. And so that's how I started getting into it. And as I started studying, I started finding permaculture. So the homestead came first, and then I started learning some of these permaculture design principles and implementing them on my own property. And that's kind of how I got into the permaculture side of it.
Yeah, so they used to come back self-taught, just and then practicing on your own property, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't work, and just building upon that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been, I help people who are out of state in some cases, but I've largely been working with people in my own region, because what I realized is there's so many region specific things that, that are easy to overlook. And I know some great permaculture designers who have given advice that just doesn't work for our given area because it's different than their given area. Like, if somebody from, I don't know, Vermont, Wisconsin, whatever, is trying to advise somebody here in Tennessee, there's things like rhizomial grasses that, that don't exist in those areas because it's too cold for them. And so something that's a great design there isn't necessarily a great design here. So I've really enjoyed working with people locally. Like I said, I'll work with people from anywhere, but one of the things I've done is tried to get to know our, this local biome really well, and start to help people get things set up in a way that they work really well for the environment that we're in.
Yeah, I think that's important. I've done remote design
Mhm.
as well, and it is challenging. I think it's limited to backyardings and smaller sites. I don't think it can apply. I don't think it applies as well. Although if
Mhm.
you've with some of the mapping techniques now and on the technology, it does make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I would definitely prefer to be there on in person.
Yep. Well,
Um,
and to your points on the mapping systems, there are some things that you can actually do remotely. Like, let's say, somebody's asking about how to move water. I had one client reach out to me from Texas, and they're having water run at their house. And so they reached out to me, and I was able to pull up very, very detailed GIS maps and tell them at least roughly how to set up some systems to divert the water around their home and then use it more appropriately on their property. So it can be done for certain things, but for overall design and full system design, it's probably best to be on site.
yeah, it's more comprehensive. So
Hmm.
what tell us about your homestead? What have you got there? Chickens, you said you
Yeah.
had compost systems.
Hmm.
Uh I see there online in your YouTube channel you have an orchard. Do you want to tell us about your homestead and what systems you have in place there?
Sure. So my homestead is pretty small. We've got an acre and a half, and about half of that is wooded and too steep um, to really do a whole lot with. So the wooded and steep section, what I'm doing is it was clear cut probably 30, 40 years ago. And so it's a lot of weed trees and junk, that I really, well, call them weed trees. They're really pioneer species. But what I'm doing is I'm slowly going through and choosing what I like. So there's small white oaks and things starting to pop up in the understory. pawpaws, things like that. So I'm going through and trimming out some of these pioneer species, using them as biochar or other things like that. So I'm kind of trying to regenerate the woods, as well as we've got a chestnut log cabin on is our house. So it was before the chestnut blight here in the U.S. in I believe it was 1918, somewhere in there. And so anyways, I know this area had chestnuts, so I'm trying to restart those on our property, especially in some of the wooded areas and things. Orchards, I have two, I call them mini orchards, because they're kind of small, compact, carefully planted systems that don't, they're not sprawling. They're not necessarily in lines. One is at the top of my property, and I kind of started that one before I really had a good grasp on permaculture principles, but it's worked great. We basically just put a giant layer of sheet mulch down, and that's really helped a lot. And that's the most mature. And then I also, I was talking before about integrate rather than segregate or function stack. Well, because everything's hilly here, wherever I put my chickens, whatever comes out of those chickens is going to go downhill. And so I put one of my orchards downhill from the chickens, and then I use something called stone lines to catch the debris coming out of the chicken coop. And so a stone line is basically just stacked stones on contour, and it can catch all the wood chips and chicken poop and manure and everything else coming downhill. So that's a pretty interesting system. And then I've got chickens and a garden, and I'm working on setting up some more resilient energy systems here on my property as well. And my next big project is really trying to get us less water dependent, because most places here in Tennessee use city water. And when we bought the property, that's what we had. But there is a spring on the neighboring property that I believe I have deeded access to. So one of my next projects is to get that set up. So that's kind of where I'm at. We've also done meat chickens, but we haven't done ruminants and other things yet, partially because of the size of the property, and partially because, I work essentially two full-time jobs. And so I'm not always here to take care of everything. So I want to set things up so if I'm gone for several days, my wife and kids can handle it, or if we're gone on vacation, it can largely be left as is. And with chickens and a garden and some orchards, that's what we can actually just leave things where they are. So that's kind of what I'm doing for a homestead and where we're at so far.
Yeah, so it seems like you have a pretty robust setup there. I like the idea of you're able to leave things for 2 or 3 days and things tick along. Definitely, that to me would take the pressure off, which is a good thing. And for me, I find them better to get as well, because you don't know what's happening. Like you get called away. That's what happens to me. I'll plant something and I'll not get back to it for 2 or 3 weeks. Then it's a mess.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So I always try and keep that in mind, and so always say to myself, I'm doing something right. If I don't get back to this for 3 or 4 weeks, what's going to happen? Living things, of course, you have to tend to them every morning and night. They need looked after, but the planting. So I've moved towards a more perennial systems and trying to get more perennials in. So the likes of the raspberries, they just turn up every year, and you eat them, and then you mulch, and that's it.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, because I see a lot of people wanting to grow things that you can grow, but are like kind of on the verge of whether they do well or, or just take a lot of maintenance. And it's like, well, instead of growing this, odd berry that you've seen somebody else grow, what about blackberries? Because you see them growing wild here, and you literally can just start planting them, and with one plant within a couple of years you can have probably 30-40 plants of blackberries, and they produce like crazy. So, and they taste amazing here because they want to grow here. So yeah, absolutely, things that are low maintenance that work well in your area are that's a great way of looking at it, is to move towards something that's a little more perennial and a bit less work.
Yeah, and as well too, because I'm quite small here, so I don't have that much things to do. But the stuff I do, I like to try not to overstretch myself. And like that, the raspberries just keep coming up everywhere. There's shoots just appear, and it's great. It's like I have
Yeah,
more free food. Uh,
exactly.
and then there's always a race for the raspberries when they're fruiting when we get out of the car. So trying to build up that this year and stay away from the annuals. I wouldn't have time like to do a market garden. Just
Right.
certainly just don't have the time, and it would end up being stressful.
Yeah, absolutely. What did
Um,
Bill Mollison say? He did that video where he said he'd be in 5 years, he'd be in danger of falling fruit because he was setting up systems that essentially would just take care of themselves.
yeah. So you're saying you work two jobs. What made you
Mhm.
start the consultancy? So you're on your own homestead. You're building these systems. What drove you to say, right? Or make you think, hold on, I can help people here.
Yeah. So I had started my own home inspection business. So that's actually my primary income earner, is home inspection. And I needed something to kind of fill the gaps when I first started doing that. So I was helping friends and family, basically doing handyman type stuff, because I'm one of my just God-given skill sets is troubleshooting and fixing things and understanding how systems work. So I was helping friends and family, and then I had one lady who wanted to start an organic flower farm, another who wanted to start growing some hemp. And actually, a lot of my videos that I do on YouTube are on her farm, where we kind of started doing some hemp when it first became CBD first became legal in the States. And we basically expanded from there and started doing all kinds of permaculture stuff and dropped the hemp thing pretty quickly. So basically, I started doing different setups for different friends and family. I started doing water catchment and pumping systems and all kinds of stuff for people that I knew, as just a way to fill space while I was growing my home inspection business. And when I realized how much it was actually helping to have somebody who had some experience in different systems to step onto a homestead, and how significantly that was keeping people from burning out or reaching the end of their rope or the end of their money, I realized that it was a not only a viable business, but I could actually do more good by charging as a business to make sure that I could support my family, but I could do more of it because of that. So that was kind of the genesis of it. I had several people reach out to me who are moving to the Tennessee area, especially during COVID, wanting to homestead. So I was able to help a lot of people find properties that worked well for their goals. And that also got me kind of on this trajectory as well, because I started realizing that I needed to ask people help people figure out what their goals are, so that they could buy the right property and so that they could start from the right place, rather than spinning their wheels and then realizing that they weren't even moving towards their goals. So all of those things kind of came together and helped me realize that I could help other people set these systems up as a business, rather than just a, now and then kind of thing that I did for friends and family.
So how would you tackle? So say now I go out and I buy a 1 acre property.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, where would you advise somebody start that's just bought that 1 acre?
Yeah. So the way I handle this is I send out a questionnaire to pretty much anybody that I'm working with. And I think it's right around 12 questions, but the idea is to essentially force those people in a nice way to write down, to pick goals. So I've actually, one of the questions is like a multiple choice, put it in order 1 through 5, and I have like 12 different things that are listed as what are their priorities, the things that are important to them. So it might be physical security or food security, healthier food, healthier lifestyle, easier lifestyle. Basically all the different things that they can choose and put in priority give me a really good idea of, where's their thinking at, what are they most working towards, what are the things they're most focused on. And then I ask them to write out certain goals and to think about, in 5 years, what are some of the goals that they might be aiming towards. And that's not necessarily that people are going to hit those goals, but what I'm trying to do is get people to think about what they actually want, rather than, and so then I can start giving advice that matches those goals and points them in the direction. Because if your goal is I want emergency meat production if things ever really go south, well, I guess rabbits are probably the correct thing to suggest in that circumstance, but maybe there's a deeper thing going on there. So I try to get to the bottom of what the real goal is and what the real reason is for that goal, and then start recommending systems that go together, and then how to stack those systems, or how to start those systems one at a time, rather than trying to pull the trigger on everything all at once. So really my goal is to get people thinking about what their goals and priorities are, and then how do we make a roadmap forward to hit those goals and priorities, without creating a giant mess. Because one of the big things that I see that people really struggle with is, where do you start? And oftentimes that starting place, if people aren't getting the help that they need to set it up right, are going to end up, getting chickens, but doing them very poorly, doing a garden that's totally separate from the chickens, even though they could be integrated in certain ways, or, getting meat rabbits because they're afraid of not being able to have meat, but then never eating them because they are kind of weirded out by the idea of eating rabbits. Right. So, there's other ways you could do quail, and you could get eggs and meat. And you might be more comfortable with that than rabbits, because they're cute, but not quite as cute and fluffy as rabbits. So, there's a lot of different ways to address the concern or a goal that somebody might have, and having a really good understanding of where they're actually coming from, what experience they have. And like I said, I've got about 12 questions that really dig into all those things, so I can give the best help possible.
Yeah, I like that people-centered approach. I have seen in the past where people just go, right, there's property, right, swale,
Yeah.
agriculture. It starts
Yeah.
throwing all this permaculture stuff at it, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah. Well, and I have a video specifically, I have kind of a series on mini swales. And the first thing I start with on the first video is, do you need swales? Should you use swales? What is it? What's an appropriate use for a swale, and when do you probably not need them? Because a lot of people will throw swales in, and now they can't drive the tractor through, or, whatever it becomes a mess instead of being a benefit to the property and to them. So yeah, absolutely. You've got to know, you can't just go, oh, that technique looks kind of cool, I'm going to go do it. You've got to think about how the systems tie together and what is the purpose of the thing that you're doing.
Yeah. And as well, I always think the age of the person, their ability, their mobility, it's like you have to design everything so they can actually maintain it. They're not out more money.
Absolutely. When you asked about 1 acre, and what I would say, and this is general advice, but especially on these smaller properties, well, I just say it's general advice. Start close to the home. If you understand permaculture at all, there's the 5 zones of permaculture. And to the extent you can, start at the home and build out. So start at zone 1, get it really dialed in, and then kind of build out. And the only exception I generally give to that is maybe add chickens kind of on the edge of zone 1 and zone 2, if that's something you want. But generally speaking, start at that closed zone, try to get it really dialed in, get it dense, and then move out from there, rather than trying to integrate everything all at once.
Yeah. And I always recommend for small gardens as well, have your garden on the way to your chicken coop.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Yep.
go to your chickens every day. And if you're
Yep.
walking through the garden, it's great. You go get your eggs and you come back to the chicken coop and you pick your herbs.
Mm-hmm.
And there you go, your omelet's all ready.
Exactly.
Um,
That's the perfect analogy. I use it all the time because people go, oh, it hits the brain. They go, oh, yeah, you're right. If I like, it's pretty. I can make it pretty. I can make it nice. I can make it a pleasant chore to go take care of the chickens because I get to see my, my beautiful herb gardens on the way out. And yeah, absolutely. This concept of, oh, I can make my own omelet from my own property with my own stuff from just walking, 15 feet out my back door. That's amazing.
yeah. I like the dance as well, working out.
Yeah,
Um, so any advice for people who get to that stage and are ready to become consultants or designers? Any advice for them on how to get started, how to take that first step?
sure.
Like how?
Yeah, I think one big one is stay humble. I still don't have all the answers. I'm never going to have all the answers. There's areas where I have more expertise than others, and I try to be as upfront and honest with that with clients about that as possible. Um, so that's a big one is realizing that it's okay if you don't have every answer. Sometimes people kind of combine that with something called the toolbox fallacy where, well, I can't do this project because I don't have every single tool, that I need to do the project before I get started on it. And that's, it's good to have the tools, but sometimes you need to start something before you're 100% set up to do that. And staying, what I was saying about staying humble and being honest and upfront about what you do and don't know will really help with clients' expectations. Um, Another thing is realize that people can be difficult to work with, not because people are bad. It's just, if I explain how to set up a chicken coop or a mobile sheep shelter or something like that, and somebody goes out to do it, there's going to be subtleties that I was thinking of that maybe I did or didn't express, and they're going to be, when that work is done, oftentimes it's going to end up different than how you would, how you kind of thought about it in your head. So as you're doing design work, having really good communication and consistent communication, realizing that other people, whether it's your fault for not explaining well or their fault for not understanding well or somewhere in between, there's going to be hiccups in communication. There's going to be times when something you suggest doesn't work. Again, that could be because it actually doesn't work, or it could be because somebody's not implementing it properly or missed some subtleties in how you explained it. So I think the hardest part is when you get down to working with clientele and making sure that that communication is good and that they're getting steered generally in the right direction. There's always going to be some hiccups. There's always going to be some corrections. And, thinking of it, there's a permaculture principle, creatively use and respond to change, right? So that's the 12th principle in David Holmgren's principles. And that's something you need to be able to do at the drop of a dime. With clients and with homesteading, with permaculture, is to be able to view the change and the things that are different than what you started with or what you were expecting, and move with that, flow with that, recognize how to make appropriate changes at appropriate times, and also recognize when to stick with something when it seems like it's kind of difficult or not quite working right at first. So as systems mature. But I think the hardest thing as somebody who's going into consulting, or whether it's even just helping putting gardens, is to always be looking for the next best thing for your clients, and to be really humble and careful about how you approach things, so that your job is to make things better for them and to make their systems work better, not to be not to be a purist about permaculture or, whatever else might be going on for you, but it's to help the client reach their goals in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, we'll definitely agree with all that. One question too I was trying to find out is who's the decision maker? Because there's no point in you designing this thing for the husband and the wife going, I don't like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm.
And also, part of it is helping people design towards their goals. Sometimes, and you have to be really careful with this, but sometimes it's helping redirect towards something that's going to more align with their goals from the idea that somebody might have. Like we just talked about swales, and a lot of people see permaculture and the first thing they want to do is put in swales because they're like, they do all these amazing things. They redirect water, they slow spread and soak, they you can grow trees on them. You can do all the, you can tractor chickens between them and, run your ruminants between your rows. And it's like, yeah, in theory and in practice, a lot of times, but, so anyways, gently helping people, kind of helping them see things a little bit differently because you've got that experience that they don't necessarily have, is a huge benefit. But it's, like I said, it's something as a consultant you have to be really careful about, because you don't want to step on toes. You don't want to make somebody feel like their ideas are a bad idea, and they may not be, or they might be. But it's important to start to explain a system as a whole, and to be patient as people kind of come around to understanding how those systems work together, as opposed to either just going along with whatever somebody thought of in the first place, or, totally redesigning what they had as an idea. So that can be a big sticking point, is, and like you said, who's actually calling the shots. And there's a lot to balance with all of the dynamics, and human dynamics are tricky. Our language is tricky. The way that we communicate, our the way that our body communicates, the subtleties of tone and everything else, it's all tricky. And we have to, when you're working for yourself, but also for your clients, there's so much to balance like that. And that can be a lot. And, it takes time to learn those things for sure. And I'm maybe 10% of the way there.
So what services do you provide? Because I like the model. I always refer to it as the Jose's model, which is the designer pairs with a
Mhm.
landscaper who has all the equipment, who does the install, and then you can act like as a almost like a project manager to make sure it's been
Yeah.
implemented right, and then you go back for the feedback, maybe over a number of years. How do you package your consults and designs? Do you offer to go back? Do you have a follow up consult then afterwards, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So generally I like to start with the consult. So that's kind of, I try to keep that price way down so that, most people who can afford to homestead can afford to have me out for the general consult. And for a lot of people, that's enough. And that preceding that, I do the questionnaire so that I have a really good feel first before I'm even on property, and I can look at maps and things. So that's kind of like the base level service that I provide. The next stage is design. And sometimes people get the design, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we just work on small designs. So essentially, I help them figure out a specific system. And a lot of times, because my one of my specialties is really in creative system design, or coming up with, say, like a water pumping system, an off-grid water pumping system, or something that's highly specialized or unique. Sometimes we'll work just on that one project, and I'll actually help install it, help explain to the client how it works, how to maintain it, things like that. And sometimes I'll periodically come out and do maintenance on it, or do upgrades or other things. So I really, I would like to be doing something that's a little bit more like design it and then project manage it. So far, most of the clients that I'm working with, they're not working on that kind of a scale. And I also really like to help people on the do-it-yourself side, because most of the people, at least moving to my area, are not thinking, broad scale, putting in big systems. A few are, but most of them are thinking they want to learn how to do these things. And so I really come in more as somebody helping them learn how to do the things. A good example would be, I had some clients who wanted to put in a garden, and to do that, we had to do some essentially small terraces with logs to get them flat enough areas where their garden wouldn't erode. And their initial, when I first got there, they were trying to pull those logs around with like trucks and things like that. And so I showed them how to use levers and how to balance the center of the log and turn the logs to where they wanted, and then have other things set up so they could roll them. And it actually went a lot faster doing it without the heavier equipment, and it was a lot more precise and worked much better, is a lot safer. And one of the things they kept saying is, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't understand that's how that worked. And that might seem, to some people, that might seem extremely simple and basic, but to a lot of people who are just trying to get started, the idea of leverage and fulcrums and different mechanical advantage, they might have learned about it in school at some point, but putting it into practice has never been something they've had to do. And so, I'll step in cases like that and try to help. And it's cool. It's awesome to see those lights go off in people's minds and get a new skill and get their hands dirty, which is a big thing I push, is getting your hands dirty. Just try it, go do something. So anyways, yeah, what I offer, I do have kind of a list on my website, but it's anything from system design to implementation. So, ideally it wouldn't be very cost effective to have me out there digging swales for somebody's property by hand. That'd be prohibitively expensive, but I do things like classes to show them how to do that. So, yeah, that's kind of, I offer pretty much everything from basic on-site consultations to large designs that I can project manage, or smaller designs that I can be on site and actually see implemented.
Yeah, like that. It's a big educational component. So yeah, what did they say? Like, teach them how to fish. Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You feed them for a lifetime.
Well, and it's a benefit to me too, right? If I teach somebody how to fish, if we have a community of fishermen and I can get cheap fish and I don't feel like going fishing, right? It's the community that's being built between, there's a few other guys who do what I do, and they do a great job as well in my area. And we have intentionally worked together rather than being, trying to be competitive, and we bring, each of us recognize the skills that we share. One of us may have, one guy, for example, is amazing at plant identification, and that's like his specialty. And so we all share these different specialties, and we can refer to each other or refer work out to each other where that's needed. And building that community, I know this isn't what you asked about, but building that community is so valuable, and having all these different people who can, in the analogy, fish, but they all have specific skills. And now we've got this community of people who, one person's great at growing out sheep, and one person's got all kinds of fruits and vegetables, and another person has has raw milk or whatever. We've got this, ever growing community in the area that becomes this support system for each other, where everybody cares about what everybody else is doing in a good way. And so that's, the education really cascades into a community that's stronger.
Yeah, so it's what do you call it? Cooperation over competition,
Mm-hmm.
and then your whole community thrives on it. That's great stuff. probably more people wouldn't have got more industries.
Mm-hmm.
I work with other designers, and yes, on the face of it, it's like cooperation over competition. But you always feel that people are just holding that wee bit back.
Right. Yep. And
So it's
I've gotten to work with such great people and foster that like cooperation. It's like you have skills in this that I don't have. You know, if I want somebody to design a food forest, yeah, I can do it. But I could also reach out to one of my other design buddies and go, hey, you know, I'd like the money, but my client is better served by you doing this. Would you be willing to take this on? And so uh, there in that breeds just a community of people who want to help each other out.
Yeah, no, I think it's very, very healthy way to look at things. So we touched on it before. You have a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find doing the videos?
Oh, it's kind of frustrating. It's interesting. I like doing it. The editing is not fun. Mostly I've done the videos for the sake of when I do a design or a consultation for somebody, I want to have some type of reference material. And so that's really why I started doing the videos, was for reference material. So it can be like, set up a integrated, chicken composting system. If I put that as a bullet point after a consult on my follow-up email, and now I can just put a link in that and they can go to my video, because trying to explain all of it in a consult is useless. So if they have that, I did a consult a couple of weeks ago and the guy's still going through the various, links that I sent and watching them and trying to understand all of them, because there's so much content there and it just provides extra for my clients. So that was why I started doing YouTube videos. Of course, when you actually start getting some amount of following or notice on YouTube, you get all the people coming in and going, oh, you shouldn't do it that way. You can't do it that way. That doesn't work. This would be a better way to do it. And it's like, maybe in your circumstance, maybe it would be in mine. I don't know. But, it's just, it's
but they never ever say, oh, here's my property and I've done it that way. It's all fiction.
Yeah, exactly.
They never actually show the link that they am doing it. They're reading it off some book, or Jeff Lawton has said it, or Paul Wheaton has said it, and they're just, they buy into it 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because you get like, oh, why didn't you use an herb spiral? I'm like, herb spiral is a great way to teach. It in practice almost never works. It becomes a weed spiral. So, it's a really cool idea and it's a great teaching principle, but I should be better at doing this on YouTube, but just asking, well, have you done that?
All right, go on, show me yours.
Yeah. Could you point me to the video of yours?
Yeah. And you'll look and they'll have like, they'll be following all these channels and they'll have no videos.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. They've got all kinds of comments to make and not a single video, which is, it's fine. It's just, there's people who think they're experts and there's people who think they're experts and really aren't. And unfortunately our society's put such a value on, quote, experts. They're just I could lead into a totally different conversation about technocracy and how we control things from the top down. But no, I mean, I enjoy doing the videos. I don't like doing the editing. It takes way too long. The return on investment isn't great, but over time I may be able to monetize the videos, or the other thing that it kind of leads to is more teaching opportunities, which is probably the biggest benefit, is besides being able to send it to clients as here's kind of an example of what I was talking about, being and getting into some of the nuance of why that works. It's beneficial in that it opens up more teaching opportunities, and teaching is a big thing that I'm interested in, is like we talked about already. I want not only my immediate community to be strong, and resilient, but I want that for other communities too. And so the more I can teach and the more I can get in and help build other communities, nearby, regionally, or even nationally, the more I want to do that. And so the videos, as YouTube kind of grows, have really been an avenue to connect with more people. And I don't know for sure, but I assume that those had something to do with you finding my information and getting in touch with me initially.
Yeah, it was Kerry Brown.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Curious who I was talking about, who does he's really great at plant identification. It's like a true specialty for him.
Yeah. And then I went and looked at your videos then. What I like about the videos when I'm looking at people is like, yeah, you know what you're doing. And you can have all the certificates in the world, but if you're on video explaining something that says, right, well, that guy knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you that, what I call it, credential.
Sure.
Yeah. You can see someone's actually loving it and doing it.
Yeah, and you get to see the results a lot of times too.
Yeah, and you know whether somebody knows what they're talking about or not, and you can see they're actually doing it, so they know. So it's that's the reason we created. So we have a blog on Vine as well, and basically the reason for that was I was sending out like emails to clients, their final email here's composting, and I was linking to somebody else's, and I thought, well, no, I need to link to my own page rather than someone else's video, and then slowly but surely, we did do a video series, but it was a bit not the best. It's still up there. It's just lessons on basic compost, but it was too much like an academic environment, where it wasn't actually us in the field. So trying now to go towards more demonstrating projects, but that's coming up this year.
Yeah.
So basically building stuff and saying, here's what I built, here's how it's working, here's the problems I had. That hopefully as well, they sort of build that credibility to say, it was actually my daughter said to me, you just talk about permaculture, you don't actually show people doing it. I was like,
there's a benefit in both, but yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you're right. So the podcast now has given me a way of sort of thinking about, right, how do I build a business this year?
Mm-hmm.
Take it away from my employment and make that transition, and then also showing people what projects I'm doing as well. Hopefully gives me that credibility.
Right.
So any advice for people starting YouTube? Because what annoys me is, I've seen it a few times as well, is you have these stupid gardening videos with like 3 or 4 million views, which are complete crap.
Mm-hmm.
No, like the grow your carrot.
Right.
Use scrap, put it in your windowsill and grow this, and they rip off other people's videos. They say, look, see how this worked. Well, it didn't work because you ripped off that video of somebody else's site. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so much of that. And getting traction on YouTube is really hard. I guess what I would say is, if you're going to start a YouTube channel, don't do it to make money. Have a purpose in it. Know your purpose and go after that purpose. And my purpose was to show my clients what I was talking about. And it's grown. It's not huge. I don't have a big channel, but it's helped a lot of people, and I've gotten to talk with a lot of people because of my channel. And so I had a purpose. I was doing it for a reason. And there's some other things, got to start function stacking on top of that, but don't do it to make money. It's not going to make you money.
Yeah, if you want money, start a fidget spinner channel on TikTok.
Yeah, or like some AI generated thing where people click through to it because it looks interesting. So yeah, I mean, when you're providing good information in a decent format, people will watch it. People will benefit from it. You'll get a lot of crap comments back about it. But it's probably, making money on YouTube is not a viable thing, I don't think, in the homesteading permaculture realm. I think you got to do it because you love doing it and you love sharing information, and realize that it's going to be a frustrating journey trying to reach very many people. So if you have a specific purpose in it and you can move towards that, that's great. If you're trying to get a huge amount of viewership. It's that area, that realm is so saturated, and there's so much. There's great stuff, great content, and there's garbage content and everything in between. And you're just probably going to get largely ignored because there's so much out there already.
And then I seen there a video yesterday. Do you know John Kohler, growingyourgreens.com?
I know oh yeah,
Yeah.
growyourgreens.com. He's out of what, Hawaii or something?
Yeah, I think he was in Vegas and he moved. But
Okay.
he get demonetized there
Oh, did he?
for talking. He's a gardening channel. I think he had a couple of cannabis videos, which is legal.
Yeah.
So he's allowed to grow it, but demonetized, and he was getting like $2,000 a month off it, and just all of a sudden gone.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
even gardening's not safe to talk about.
Yeah,
It's
apparently
like,
you can't talk about anything.
no, like somebody had offended by a few cannabis videos that they just demonetize you, and that's it.
Yep.
So it's definitely not a stable income.
No.
Or,
No, and if you're going to make any kind of income off of it, I mean, great if you can monetize a YouTube video and make a few bucks, but I would consider it extra, something you could throw it in investments. Don't use it as an income.
yeah, I don't rely on it. Is there anything else we meant to touch on there? Yeah, troubleshooting.
Yeah, troubleshooting I think that's a really important skill to have. It's so many people don't get their hands dirty. They don't figure things out. They don't understand how the physical world works. One of my favorite things we did with my daughters. So my daughters are homeschooled, and I try to help out where I can. And they were learning Mechanical Advantage a couple of years ago. And so what we did is each week they were learning one kind of aspect in Mechanical Advantage. So, as levers or pulleys or, whatever the gears. And so we made different things on the weekend when I was home to try those things out. And I'll get back to troubleshooting in a second. I'll tie it all together. So, one week, and we made a catapult where we used, rubber bands and obviously levers with, it was a small catapult. And basically what we did was we put a little bucket on it, and they were able to fling, our rotten tomatoes from our garden to our chickens. And we did a whole we put in a pulley system in their tree fort so they could, pull big rocks up to the tree fort that they otherwise couldn't lift. And, the reason I'm mentioning this when it comes to troubleshooting is most people don't actually understand how the physical world works because they sit behind a computer all day. They're taught to sit still in class and listen and, get an A and, regurgitate whatever the teacher said to them, but it doesn't reflect reality. That even a history class doesn't reflect reality. Usually the whatever was going on was so much more complex. And so to troubleshoot, you need to understand how these systems work. And our brains do this incredible thing. They start to make connections that we wouldn't otherwise have when we start to physically interact with things. When my girls got to build a catapult and fling tomatoes into the chickens, well, they got to troubleshoot because then we started asking, what adjustments do we need? If we adjust the fulcrum, if we put the fulcrum in a different place, does that launch the tomatoes further, or does it do they land closer to us? Like, how do we change the trajectory? And so that's a form of troubleshooting. And our brain makes those connections to, oh, if I do this thing, then this thing happens. And when we have that connection of when I do this thing, that thing happens, then we can more easily start to go, oh, okay, this thing isn't working. What are the mechanisms within this system that I need to understand why it wouldn't work? And now I can go, okay, there's 3 things that I've come up with for, let's say, why my plumbing isn't working, why my water isn't getting from my well to my house. Could be my, based on the symptoms, it could be that electrical isn't getting to my pump anymore. My pump could be dead, or let's say my footer valve isn't working. Well, I can put those things together. I can come up with those concepts because I understand how the system works. I've got my hands dirty. I understand how water pumping works, how pressure works, how flow rates work, and all that kind of stuff. And then I can take those three potential issues and I can use the scientific method on them, and I can try to falsify my hypothesis of each of them. If it's the footer valve, I'm going to get some pressure sometimes, and then it's going to run backwards when the pump shuts off or when the pump overheats. So that's not what's happening. I'm just getting no pressure. So it's probably either electrical or the pump itself died. So now I can narrow it down, and being able to troubleshoot like that and understand how the physical world works is absolutely paramount to being able to homestead properly. It's absolutely paramount to understanding how to integrate systems within permaculture. Understanding that nitrogen and ammonia will break down carbon and is really important. Understanding that the end grain on a wood chip will absorb that nitrogen and ammonia so much faster than, say, straw, which has very little end grain. Little things like that, where your brain starts to make those connections. Then you go, oh, and also wood has way more nutrient, minerals and things that are being mined from deep down than straw does because it has deeper roots. Well, why don't I put that in my chicken coop? And in my chicken coop and run, now I can get rid of all the smells because ammonia soaks into that end grain on these wood chips and they're free, instead of paying for straw that doesn't work very well and then stinks. Your brain starts making those connections and things go so much better. So troubleshooting is just this, it's paramount to doing, being successful in homesteading and being more self-reliant. And hopefully all that makes sense, but I think getting your hands dirty is where that starts.
Yeah, definitely its application to gardening, because you're constantly troubleshooting every year. It's like, what worked well this year, what didn't work well, well, why didn't that work well, what was the climate like?
Yep.
Right, next year, how can I do the offset that? Do I need to water more, water less?
Yeah.
And then you start, and that's over like many years. So if you're gardening, you have to develop that skill, I would say.
Absolutely. And a good example of that, kind of along what you were saying, is, so here in Tennessee, we get these really hot, humid days getting closer to the end of the summer. And as your brain is kind of putting things together and understanding things, this is what happened for me, is finally I heard somebody say that that plants get their minerals by basically evaporating 90-95% of the water. And as they evaporate the water that they're pulling up from the ground, that's how they get their minerals. And so if they can't, which when I heard that, I go, okay, so if they can't transpire, they can't evaporate the water because it's too hot and humid, then they're not going to be pulling up the calcium and magnesium and other things they need to function well. And one of the big things that you see as an issue here in Tennessee is, as it gets really hot and muggy, nearing, later in the summer, you see some major calcium deficiencies. And typically people would troubleshoot that by saying, well, I'll just spray my soil with calcium and that'll fix it. But it doesn't. And so if you have the, that troubleshooting skill set, you start to go, okay, well, let's put these things together. We're not getting enough calcium. We're seeing signs of calcium deficiency in these plants. Spraying the ground or the soil with calcium isn't working. Why is that? And now that I know that when the way that plants get their minerals is by transpiring all that water or evaporating all that water, and then they condense the minerals from that, now I can go, oh, okay, well, I could use a really high quality CalMag foliar spray in the evening as it's getting cooler. The plant can absorb some of that through its leaves. It'll get the calcium, magnesium that it needs. I don't need to do it a lot or do huge doses of it like you would in the soil. And most of the soil here actually has plenty of calcium in it. We've got a lot of limestone and things in the area. So calcium is almost never an issue in the soil. And so it's this kind of, now I just troubleshooted what is going wrong and how to fix it, because I heard some little nugget of, somewhere else, somebody said some little nugget, and my brain went, oh, aha, I got it. I know how to fix this now. And that's a skill set to learn and to constantly get better and better at. I'm not an expert at it, I guess. But it's something that I have a propensity towards, and I'm always learning how to implement that more and more.
Yeah, definitely. One advice and troubleshooting I would have is, so I used to work in manufacturing where we'd have to repair faulty systems. And quite often you'd be working away and taking measurements, and you can't find it, and going away for a cigarette outside. I used to smoke the time.
Mm-hmm.
How many times I fixed faults while having a smoke outside?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's right. And like you said, a penny drops, 2 neurons connect in your brain, and it's like, right, and then you go back and you fix it straight away.
Yep.
So
no, absolutely.
Trust in your brain. They take care of that, but you have to be observing. You have to be measuring things, observing.
Yep. Taking a break that's great advice, because I see so many people they get stuck on the thing and they get frustrated and they just keep changing things before they observe what that change did, because they didn't get the result immediately. So sitting on it, thinking about it. I don't know, like when I was a kid, we didn't really have the internet, so you learn to do odd things. One of the things for me was juggling. It's something I was interested in when I was like 10 or something. And I'm like, so I read some books on it, and the best advice I ever came across on how to learn to juggle was do it until you can't do it very well. Like do it until your muscles are like you're starting to drop the balls and things. And then go to sleep on it. Because when you really focus on a problem and then you go to sleep, your brain dumps all the junk that isn't useful, and then it processes what was useful. So oftentimes if you're working on a problem, work on it until you start feeling like you're kind of going backwards, or you're not making headway anymore, and then sleep on it. Let your brain, let it be something that's going over in your brain before you go to sleep. And when you wake up, oftentimes you'll have an answer pretty quickly afterwards.
I'll often do that with design work as well. Or say I'm writing a blog, or I know I have to do work in the morning, spend 20 minutes before I go to bed reading up on something, a problem I have to find a solution for, and then sleep on it. You'd be surprised how many times the solution comes to you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how our brains are designed to work like that.
Yeah, I think it's great. Ryan, thank you very much. You want to just let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably there's 2 things you can do. My YouTube is probably my biggest social media. I have others as well, but if you just look for the Homestead Consultant on YouTube, you'll find me. Other than that, my website, thehomesteadconsultant.com, I have links to most of my social. I've been trying to work on, believe it or not, TikTok and X and Instagram and some of these others, just to get a little bit more traction. But mostly YouTube and my website, thehomesteadconsultant.com. People can find all my contact information there. It's pretty easy to get a hold of me.
Great stuff. And all them links will be in the description if you want to find them. Ryan, again, thank you very much. And guys, that's been the Permaculture Vine podcast with Ryan Steva. We'll check these all next week.